these damn questions. All these damn questions. People always ask all these damn questions.
People always asking me all these damn questions, and they so confused. I don't know what to tell them. Why he do this? Why he do that? How you do this? How you do that? Hell yeah, I'm trying to do what I want, and I get good grades. That's why I wear these hats ways. These people recognize that's why they stay up in my face.
Stay up in my face. All right, man. Doc.
What
Here
up?
we go. You know, I had to take a trip, had to do a couple of things, had a couple of moves, but you know, I've been meaning to get back up with you because I asked you the other day. I was like, you want to get on this? So I felt like it was a perfect day to go on and do it. What we sweet serenading to, because you know it's so much, because you know I can get after a lot of stuff, Doc, but you know, we need to talk about this Tyre Nichols thing, man. And I think you know, a lot of people know who that is and what happened to him, but at the same time, I want to know your perspective as a Black law enforcement officer, man, before we start tearing certain things up. So my sweet serenade is to the credibility to which to speak.
Yeah,
And
you know.
the Emperor and the God, the Emperor and the Gladiator, I'm about to give it to you. The Emperor and the Gladiator is going to focus on the King and the God. And from this perspective, Doc, talk about, like, we live in this world of dominance and trying to fight. You know what I mean? Like, we're fighting a lot of different things, and now we're fighting this issue. So please, I'm sorry, your credibility.
Oh man, but I think it's a continuation of a fight that we've been fighting for centuries. You know, it's just Tyre Nichols is one of the names that we have to add to the list of names. You know, I think there's a tendency to talk about these issues like they're isolated, but I don't see that. I see a continuation or perpetuation of a cycle that is on repeat. It's just insert name, insert location, insert trauma, and press play. And so when I start to see these cases, you know, I really don't see this as Black cops with a Black man. I see this as a system that allows this to take place, that if it wanted to stop it, it could, but there is an interest in essentially, you know, continuing this process. And I think that we're coming to a point where not only is enough going to be enough, but people are going to stop, or I should say, people are going to begin to take the law into their own hands. You know, I think people are going to now become more confrontational when it comes to encounters that are essentially initiated in bad faith. And I think that, you know, there's only so much people can take until they reach their breaking point. And for a lot of people, I'm starting to see that they're at their point of breaking, because they're like, when is it going to stop? You know, when is enough?
Yeah,
enough?
I absolutely agree. And so I have to, for the record, say that in this system of thinking, I'm agreeing with you. The system is the system. Insert name, insert tragedy, bring on the audience, right? And you know who that's going to be. And you know who's not going to say a damn word. Until they start asking questions, and that's fine, because people want to know. It's like in this world, you either got to know everything you talking about, and don't be wrong ever.
Yeah.
Or you claim ignorance, total ignorance, right? And so this system, again, has devoured the soul of another young man, regardless of the color, the race. Yeah. And now we're going to add that he's Black. So it's another Black tragedy. Yeah. And then it's another police incident, right? And then it's another Black on Black crime, right?
Yeah.
And as an investigator and as a human being, as soon as it happened, I speculated that there was something more to that situation.
Oh yeah, there always is.
I mean,
I mean, yeah,
there always is, but in this one, I was specifically asked a question about it because, passive aggressively, this is police brutality with
yeah,
no race involved.
yeah. Because you start to look at how he was treated, and it was definitely personal. You start to see that there's a psychology in killing, and the closer you are to the person you kill, the more personal it is. So shooting somebody from far away isn't personal. Stabbing them with a knife is more personal. Using your own hands is the most personal
It's
you can get to
personal.
killing someone. And there's different types of reasons for that. I think that one of the reasons that people, you know, uh, it's called prejudice or prejudging things. I find that the reason that a judge does not provide his ruling on the day one of the case is because the judge has to hear all the facts first. And so when you get all the facts and you make a judgment, it's not a prejudice, it's not prejudice because you hear all the facts. I think we are in an era of judging before we have all the facts. And
Mhm.
sometimes you won't get all the facts. And I think that it's
Right.
part and parcel where we try to fill in the gaps because speculation, innuendo, insinuation, and it becomes easier. It's like it sells more newspapers if something's hot and scandalous, as
Well,
opposed,
that's what the tabloids are for.
yeah.
That's what the tabloids are for. So let's talk data. Let's talk data. First of all, how do you even know that that's like how did you profile that as being personal because of the way that how do you even know that?
Well, so there's a lot of books on the subject of killing. Dave Grossman wrote a book called On Killing, and so I think that part of the tendency is to think that pretextually, when an officer pulls you over, they're supposed to pull you over for a lawful reason. You can see in this interaction,
Right.
as soon as they made contact with them, they drug him out of the car. That's not how you treat people. You don't drag
Okay,
somebody out of
so
a car, force them on the ground. He was actually more calm than the police officers. He said, "Hey, man, y'all doing too much. Y'all doing too much." You know what I mean? And so
yeah.
I look at this and I say, yes, they were doing too much. And I think that there was an intent behind them doing too much. And I think that when you start to unpack this in subsequent days, I think that there's a tendency to think that you have to wait until the official source comes out to confirm or deny something, or
Yeah.
you don't want to,
Man.
you don't want to tarnish a potential jury pool with
Hmm.
speculation. And I think that's all
Right.
fine and dandy, but I think that it's okay to have an opinion. It's okay to have an
Okay,
opinion,
so
and
let
I
me
think
ask you this. 'Cause I cut you off because we on confident opinion. Perfect. I want a confident opinion from you, like right now. Let's just say this happened in your line of work when we work. We used to work in similar things together,
yeah,
right? You worked in law enforcement. I worked in legal. So there was a certain process when things like this happen,
yeah,
right?
yep,
So let's talk about that, right? You get a call out somewhere, right?
yeah,
That is not normal behavior. Okay, let's just say that happens. An investigation is happening,
yeah.
right? Investigative minds who normally deal with this type of thing automatically start speculating certain things based
Oh yeah,
on what they see already.
extrapolation. We,
Ooh,
we find out what we don't know using what we do know. So if the shoe print was a size 9, I can infer that the person that did it wore a size 9 shoe. You know what I mean? We can find out what we don't know using what we do know, and that is an
right.
investigatory tactic. But one of the things that we don't know in this case, and I have not yet to hear the specific reason for the stop in the first place. I've heard some speculation
Mm,
driving. But so one of the things that I've learned is that in any conspiracy, you want to get your story straight, and multiple stories tend to lead to skepticism. And
mm,
if they had a legitimate reason for pulling him over, they would have led with that up front. They would have
right.
led with that. Yes, this individual, we suspected him of doing something, fill in blank.
Blase.
That's why we had interaction with him. Now I've heard the rumors
Correct.
about, certain relationships and stuff like that. And I think that, in due time, that stuff will come out. But once again, I think that when we find out, that what happened to him, why it was allowed to happen to him is because of the tactics that they used. And so, one of the buzzwords that they will say is stop resisting, give me your hands. Like, these are codes, we're about to brutalize you.
Yeah.
And so, and then the fight or flight mechanism comes in. Like, nobody is just going to stay there and get beat up
and get whooped.
That ain't human nature. Like, if somebody punches you in your head, your first reaction is to go like this, to put your hand on your head when you got hit. That's an automatic sympathetic nervous system reaction. And so when you start to find yourself and you think your life's in danger, then yes, you're going to flee. And I think that, from my experience, is any time that a cop has to run, they're going to mess you up.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. They mad that you made them run. They pissed.
Hey, so let's talk about that relationship thing, right? Because at the end of the day, we live in a world full of facts that get misconstrued as truths, right? And there's a lot of speculation left. But that's why the credibility of understanding what you're looking at is important, right? So to make speculation on these, because some people want to fill the gaps. And I can say that filling the gaps is very dangerous. Oh, and we should always wait for it. But sometimes we want an excuse. I want to know why there was no, just like you said, because when I heard all this, I didn't even watch the whole video, man. I saw the beginning and I saw a little interaction where they was kind of getting after him, and that was it. Right. But the way they pulled him over, the aggression, it didn't even, you take off those police uniforms, it looked like a gang was whooping his ass. Right? Yeah. And I said, yo, a gang was abused. That's what I'm saying. A gang of police officers. But that in Memphis, I don't know what it looks like up there, man. But what I'm saying is that looked familiar to me. Yeah. Right? Okay. So what I saw was an abuse of power. Yeah. And I know, and I've seen abuse of power. They do that shit in correction facilities. Now, I ain't been in there, but we know that shit happens. And we know about it. Now, I was on the move for the last 2 days, so I wasn't able to do as much research. But correct me if I'm wrong. Is that main officer, Demetrius Haley, a former correction officer?
Yeah. See, I'm not sure about his background. But I think that there was, I saw an interview with somebody who had worked with them before. And, one of the things that I've started to see happening, and this is part of I call it propaganda. This is where, propaganda. This is where, any information, and I think what black cops are going to find out is they're not going to get the support of the Blue Lives Matter crew. They're not going to get the, all lives matter people. They're going to get the treatment that black people get, which is one, tarnishing your character, besmirching your reputation, and portraying you in the most negative light possible, because we know how the machine works. You see, and that's why, there was talk about, why were certain officers who were there who didn't have melanin, who weren't charged initially, but we're seeing later more and more information is coming out. And I think what happens is the body cam footage is that it makes it harder for those in power to cover up things now. See, back in the day, they could say, hey, we're just going to wait this investigation, and they have this like wait you out strategy. They know that in 2 weeks, it'd be out of the news cycle, and they can just brush that under the rug. So they're just trying to wait. But now they have to explain, not only why was this man kicked in the head while he had handcuffs on the ground, which is considered deadly force. If you kick somebody in the head, that's lethal force. And when you have to explain this, even the Supreme Court has ruled the only time that police have to protect you is when you're in your physical custody. He was in physical custody, fully restrained, and he was beaten and battered and bruised. I mean, it looked like a gang initiation. That's literally what it looked like.
Had to be a reason, man. And so I'm
Oh,
gonna tell you, man. Listen, so my speculation was that it was a sneaky link.
yeah.
I did it boldly. I also got another bold prediction, by the way. LeBron plays basketball with his son, eventually become part owner of the Suns, and his son come and plays for the Suns. But anyway, listen, man. I think that sneaky link got him messed up. Tall dude. I don't know. I don't. I'm trying to find that information. It seems to be rumor, but
Yeah.
I feel like I heard that thing. I looked real deep down, and I heard the chicken head wire talking about it, bro.
Yeah.
That's a different type of information. Different type
Oh
of
yeah.
information. Hey, some people don't. When I say the chicken head wire, I was looking real deep and I heard some real personal stuff coming from some people who work in a factory. And I know how factory people work. I'm from Columbus, Georgia. That's an
Yeah.
industrial city.
Yeah.
And when people talk about tea, they be knowing about that tea.
Yeah. Oh yeah, but see, and
Man, whatever.
I think part of the problem is that a lot of the information that is not being disclosed publicly could affect the charges. And I think that
Yeah.
if there was a link that can prove that he went out there with the intent of harming him, now we got to look at different charges.
It's done.
We got to look at
We're
different
talking
charges.
about premeditated murder.
Yeah, we're
First
looking at
degree.
different charges. Yeah, and so now I think but the argument I think to make when it comes to these type of charges for a police officer is we're in unprecedented territory because you'd have to prove.
No. We are in unprecedented territory because we haven't had a unique situation that they're going to hang their black asses out to dry.
No, valid.
Yeah. Look, what?
Yeah,
You see how fast they indict? What? Have
you
ever seen that fast of indictment?
Yeah, but when I say unprecedented, I'm not saying that. I mean, getting a murder one conviction is tough by itself. Even proving what you know.
Yeah.
That's a tough sell.
I would think this would be an aggravated. They would depend on. It would be a form of aggravated manslaughter.
But so right now, with the second degree murder charge, I mean that's what Derek Chauvin was charged with, because essentially, like the argument would be that this individual woke up that day, put on his uniform, and went out there to murder someone. Now that is going to be a tough sell. That's exactly that's a tough sell, and I think that when you start to look.
Go ahead.
No, but when you start to look at some of the protections,
I was thinking.
But no, when you start to look at some of the protections that officers have, is mainly prosecutors tending to only go after charges that they know they can get them on. And I think sometimes you see the opposite happen. When the prosecutor wants the cop to get off of the hook, they overcharge them, knowing that they can't make it stick. So it's like a sneaky thing. Yeah.
Sneaky. It's sneaky. Yeah. Oh, yeah. All right. So with that, right? So how is this investigation really going to be in, like, how do we keep the media? How is this investigation not tainted, man? Like, this is going to be tough.
But I don't think that the issue is going to be like, so if these were regular dudes on the street, we know this would be an open and shut case. We know that it'd be RICO. They could essentially get them for organized crime. I mean, it's so anybody that's a party of a crime is guilty of that party. But with police officers, one of the things that I've seen happening is that they have so many different legal protections, you know, when it comes to using force. Yeah, man, it's a liability issue. And I think that when you start to look at some of those safeguards that they have, it's going to expose a lot, because I do think that they're going to get the full extent. And I think that one of the reasons that is because the investigation, I think, unfolds very quickly. See, you're not going to see a 2-year, 3-year waiting period. You know, you're not going to see that like you see in previous cases, because the video evidence is damning. They got this dude in handcuffs, holding him up while dudes throwing haymakers at him. He gets no medical treatment. I mean, it's a failure on so many different levels. And I think that when you start to look at, you know, Memphis is a good example. I mean, the police budget.
Very good example. First 48.
Yeah, but it's $278 million last year was the police budget. And my question is, what are you getting for this money? Like, literally, what are you getting for $275 million? And I'm thinking to myself that, you know, I always ask myself when it comes to these situations, what law could have been in place to have prevented this? You know, what standard could there have been to prevent this? And that's where we find ourselves at a crossroad, because most of these rogue cops that are out here literally doing street justice, thinking they're Judge Dredd, you know, that I'm going to be the jury, judge, executioner all on the scene. We have to change that mentality.
Well, I think that would have to start at the local level, man, because to understand law enforcement is to understand legislation.
Yeah.
Because legislation controls the laws that are made, and the cops enforce laws, but there need to be accountabilities, very, very, very visible accountabilities for the police. So you got to check the checker. The checkers need to be kept in check, right?
Yeah.
And so I want to move to something. Well, go ahead, Doc. Go ahead, make it.
No, I was just going to say, man, that, you know, although these are local issues, I think that the only entity that can make policy for all police is the Supreme Court simultaneously, meaning the precedents, the ruling, and case law.
The strike down.
Yeah,
but
it
has to start. All that stuff starts at that level to which it happens, right? And if there's some sort of injustice and it's not taken, like the Supreme Court, don't just take cases, right? It has to be appealed up to that, unless you know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm just talking about.
And so I know what you're saying.
The precedents.
Okay, go ahead.
The cases, the case law that gives them precedent can't be challenged at the local level. So essentially,
for sure.
So once it's got to the court and the court has decided, it now affects everybody. And I think that even though
in contrast, the challenge to that particular law has to start at the lower level.
Well, yeah,
right.
And so, but my argument is you have to circumvent the courts and change how interactions happen, because the court doesn't say when the cop can interact. That can happen at the local level. Right. The court's rulings tend to only come into play once the interaction has begun.
Well, that's where the states come in.
Exactly.
That's where the states come in, but that's where, you know, what 10th Amendment.
Right. And that's a big challenge. So it's like, it's like when Breonna Taylor was murdered. Yeah, they banned no-knock raids in Louisville, but what about Cleveland?
Correct. But that's it. Like, what about
do I gotta wait until somebody gets killed in a no-knock raid in my city before I could change the policy here? Or can we do that beforehand?
Okay, but you have to change the policy if there's a problem, sir.
Yeah.
So
but it tends in our communities, only tragedies change policies with us. It takes tragedy usually to change policy. And I think that's the unfortunate part, is waiting for something bad to happen before there is policy change.
Blood, sweat, tears. All struggle. Nothing comes easy, man.
Sure.
And that's what, regardless of what people like to talk about it, that's why slavery is so important for us to not forget. That's why we talk about it. And that's why if anybody want to act like they gonna forget, we're gonna get it correct.
All
the
day.
Civil rights, all that other stuff, because we ain't gonna blow over it. The two best black quarterbacks, arguably some of the best quarterbacks, you know, in a long time, whatever.
Yeah.
Because there's always been a conversation about black quarterbacks not having the IQ to play that. That's happening. We're addressing all this stuff. And it's not to be confrontational, it's just to get the record straight. Because I'm sick of people who don't know what they talking about talking. You
Hey,
got to
man.
put your credibility next to what you're talking about, right?
Hey, but the beauty of that is that if you let a fool speak, they will reveal their ignorance. And
Absolutely.
and oftentimes it's hearing, like, you cannot make a counter argument unless you hear the initial argument first. So I enjoy hearing people's arguments, because all it means is that I have to now do some more research on the counter argument. And a lot of times, counter argument, they're not looking beyond their own biases and their own prejudice when they're speaking. Because I hear a lot of people with this, man, if he would have just did what he was told. And I'm just thinking to myself, like, so you mean to tell me that you have to comply with tyranny?
We talking about the people who listen to me, Doc. Think about, can we do a quick personal data statistic right now?
Yeah.
Who do you picture saying something like that? Do you?
Well, I picture that somebody who come from a small town, who the cop is their neighbor or their softball coach, and they have a great relationship with policing, and they have no idea what it's like. Like, they don't have any idea that the Chicago police ran a torture dungeon where they beat up people to get investigations. They don't know about the LA Rampart division that ran a gang that you had to murder somebody to get initiated into that. And every time they killed you, they add to that tattoo. They don't know about the organized crime that happened. So I think that there's a tendency.
Can I add one thing to that?
Yeah.
I want to know if there's a person who has said that to you. They should have just complied. They should have just did what they were told. I want to hear from their parents if they ever said, "No, mom, shut up, mom. Screw you, mom." I want to know if that's the same person.
But this is a psychological issue, because we all want to believe that we live in a just society. We want to believe that the law is impartial. We want to believe that justice is blind and that everybody gets a fair shake if they just follow the rules. See, that's what we want to believe.
That's a lie.
But when we're presented with evidence that contradicts this, we have to now create explanation for this variance. And I tell people, we live in two Americas, and you just don't happen to know about the America that I live in. And
absolutely,
my kids are not being raised in the America your kids are being raised in. Because if your kid don't comply, he will get choked to death. Okay? When your kid don't comply, he ain't getting choked to death. He getting taken to Burger King. He getting a nice meal. He gonna get treated with kid gloves. He can go murder a synagogue, and they will literally ask him, do you want an extra pillow on his cot in the prison? So we don't have the same rationale. And they know. See, if they were honest with themselves, they know this. They know this.
So
the only reason they won't admit it to us is because it would make their fairy tale that they believe we live in disappear.
And so when we say they, I want to be very specific. They, the people who are living in the mental myopia, right? Who don't understand what we're talking about, and those people know who they are. But Doc, I want to talk about something real quick. What's the difference between an emperor and a king? In your opinion, man.
I think that the emperor has kings under him. Kings answer to the emperor. And I think that when you start to look historically, the emperor, rules far more territory. And I think that the emperor tends to be more recluse. When you start to rule an empire, you have to make sure that you can provide governance for territories where people have different religions, different belief systems. They have all these different things. So it takes more skill, I think, to run an empire. Whereas a kingdom or as a king is only concerned with their subjects in the locale that they are they're over. And so when you start to look at the emperor has, I think, lost meaning because people don't want to live in an empire. Because empires, people don't want to live in an empire. I mean, psychologically, they don't want to
Right.
because people are very nationalistic. They want to have their flag, they want to have their country, their right, you know. And in an empire, you have many flags.
Right. Well, that's why the king is so important. Right. Like the thought is that the king fights with his men. You know what I
Historically,
mean? That's
historically,
what we're talking about. We're talking about the true kings.
yeah.
You know what I
The true
mean? Like,
the true king was on the battlefield leading the army. And he
exactly.
probably became king because he was one of the bravest ones out there and he didn't die, you know.
Then so let's talk about the movie Gladiator and let's talk about the movie Sparta.
Okay.
300, excuse me, 300, right? And we're talking about the
Yeah.
Spartans. That's the difference between the Roman Empire and the emperor and the gladiator. And we're talking about, you know, Leonidas with Sparta and being
Yeah.
a king. And they would throw out the weakest because of the potential, because anybody could be king, right? At that
Yeah.
point in time, the person who owned it, who earned it and was there, was ruling, but anybody could be king.
Yeah.
Everybody had to be ready to be king.
Yeah. And so the birthright was important because the idea is to train someone in what does it mean to be a king. And I think that, you know, this is historically has been lacking to us, you know, because we were not bred or we were not raised to run kingdoms. We were not raised with kingdom mindsets, because if you live under a kingdom, then you understand that the king is judged by the standard of the people who are in his kingdom. He's not judged by his own material wealth. He's not judged by his palace. He's judged by the well-being of the people that's under him. If the people under you are poor, you are a poor king. If the people under you are affluent, you are a good king. And so often we have the idea that ruling people is foreign to us because we don't like to think that we're being ruled by people. We don't like to think that. This is what Alexis de Tocqueville wrote in Democracy in America. He said that it was a contradiction in America that we call everybody sir. He said it confuses people. When you call somebody sir, which is a noble term, it was for terms for knights. He said that by doing this, it gives the illusion of equality in America. It gives the illusion that you can be noble. But he said, but you will never be noble because you were born into nobility. But he said by us using it so casually, the shoemaker, you can call him sir. The coppersmith, you called him sir. But in England, that term sir was reserved for the nobility. And he said we kind of tricked the people into thinking they could be part of that nobility by our platitudes, by our gratitudes, by our word use. And he says, but they don't understand that they will never be in the castle, even though they have the title of sir. You know, and I think that goes into the psychology of keeping our system in place. Is the illusion that one day you can be in the kingdom, that you could be in the nobility, in the aristocracy, but it ain't happening, because if everybody was in the nobility, there would be no nobility.
Are you talking about a meritocracy?
Well, yeah, but this is the beauty of it, is that we are operating under something that's very instrumental, is because we tend to think that our system is unique in the world. And I would say it's only unique psychologically because we have convinced people to buy into the idea that although you can come from rags to riches in America, you can have nothing and you can live in a mansion. And we're going to use your story to tell everybody else that you can do this too if you work hard enough. But then I'd say there ain't enough mansions for everybody. Somebody gonna be a trailer park.
Listen, but you gotta keep the people in the trailer park inspired, right? So no. Listen to this though.
Or
so
fearful.
Tell me, both. You fearful But the only way you get out of that fear is through the American dream. Maybe you know, be an influencer or something like that, right? So, peep game. I just pulled something from what you said, right? Because the TikTok algorithm over here is different than the one in China.
Oh yeah, because they're training children in China to be socially aware, to be educated. It's an education tool because they restrict
And
content
they're doing
based. Yeah,
that's warfare.
yeah,
That's
of course.
that is
Psyops.
warfare that people don't even the psychological warfare that is going on, bro. Do you even like, regardless of what, I don't even get on TikTok like that at
Yeah,
all. And I'm not talking about because it's Chinese, because I already know it's like I don't got time for that. Regardless of what it is, it's a time suck, but it's meant to distract and get people to think that they can. It's like the lottery, right? It's like
yeah,
that's why Americans play the lottery so much, dog. Like there's this chance that I won't have to work and struggle ever and get things free
yeah,
and get called sir and be noble. One day I'll be noble without work.
yeah. But I think that no one goes to war without understanding the strategy of their adversary. No one turns down intelligence from their adversary when it's available. I think that this isn't to say you have to be consumed with it, but it's to be knowledgeable about the tactics. It's because the motto of China is we will kill you by your freedoms. You say you got freedom of speech, let's see how far you can take that. You think you got freedoms, so it's the death by 1,000 cuts, because they don't play in 4-year election cycles like we do. They ain't every 4 years trying to figure out. They don't do that. And so what we have been done is we have created a society of people who live in 2 to 4 year increments. You know, who is going to be in power next year so I can figure out my tax code, and I'm thinking to myself, like, this isn't how you make strategy. You don't make strategy based off of the initial before someone's name, who wins an office of 33% of the people in this country. And so, but I think that we're starting to see this, and with these cases, I think what we're seeing is the facade being removed. We're starting to see this, and I think that we're having to acknowledge that the arguments that have worked historically, because I call it an intergenerational racist thought, because when a black person was lynched, and it was like at a state fair, it was like a big deal, and I would ask myself, what were the parents telling to the children who were at these events? And then it dawned on me. They told their children that he wouldn't be getting lynched if he would have just obeyed the law. See, it's the same argument. See, and this argument has been so pervasive because, well, if he would have got off that sidewalk when that white person was walking, he wouldn't have got lynched. If he wouldn't have raised his tone to that white woman, he wouldn't have gotten lynched. It's his fault. See, it's not our fault. We're just keeping the law, and that has always been a contradiction.
Let me ask you this, Doc, because I know we can do this. So that's what I wanted to know, the difference in this world right now. We live in if you're not the police, right? If you're a black person, because you can be black in the police and have this authority, right?
Yeah.
And even seem like you might be able to get away with it. But we hear these stories where not a black officer, sorry, a police officer was, then you look up, he's black, like, I gotcha, thought you was above the law. Hey, right? But there's this thing of being like black and not a cop, right? It's like, oh, right?
Well,
and so I ask you, this is what I want you to think about, though. The Emperor and the Gladiator. The thought that I had was that the Emperor is more powerful than the king, but we have to kill the Emperor because of the way, just like we talk about with empires, that is a recluse and thing, you get shut off, and then there becomes this, you're better than a classism that comes along with it, to where we have the Emperor and the Gladiator, like on Gladiator, because if I'm not mistaken, he was almost trying to be emperor, end up dying, da 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 da. Okay, let's pause that. The gladiator the gladiator can be a king. The gladiator can be a king. He was the general. He was the Roman army general, which is, you know, that's if he was to become a king, that's the perfect king, the general king, whatever, right? Doesn't do it because of oppression. So the gladiator has so much courage that they have none. Because if they had the courage to be the king, he could take over just take the empire. Would you
Yeah.
agree or disagree with that?
Well, yeah, but I think that there's the reason that happens is because, and this is what they learned from Assyria. Power also brings paranoia.
Mm-hmm.
When you're too powerful, you're paranoid that somebody is trying to take this power from you. So you then become secluded and you don't trust anybody. And when you start to not trust anybody, everybody's a threat. And when everybody's a threat and you have power, you become tyrannical. You kill people ahead of time. The reason I think that the idea of the emperor, the gladiator power comes because he can do what the emperor cannot do. He can touch the people. The gladiator plays to the crowd. And see, the emperor can give you the thumbs up, the thumbs down, meaning he controls life or death. But what the gladiator does is he knows that if he doesn't win this arena, his life is over anyway. So you never fight somebody who is fighting with nothing to lose. We have to understand this idea. If you're fighting somebody with nothing to lose, then you're going to be in a fight of your life. Because
I made a statement. I'm sorry. I made a statement. Winners grow loyalty. Losers depend on it.
Yeah. I mean, is it better to be feared or loved?
Well, so you just made the statement. Like the gladiator, as long as he's winning, he has what he needs, right?
Yeah.
But as soon as he loses, he's going to hope that there's loyalty to the idea of who he is.
Oh, yeah.
That he doesn't get the thumbs down or that he doesn't lose the crowd, because when he's winning, he has the social capital and the brute strength to take out the emperor and everything the emperor has if the crowd's on his side.
Yeah, but this is the thing. So the idea that most of the gladiators came from the slave class of people, meaning that they were fighting on behalf of someone else. I think that one of the things that happens a lot of times is that we start to look at antiquity and we start to say, what are the parallels that we can take from them today? And I think that one of the biggest parallels that we can take today is that the emperor always fears the strongest kingdom of his empire. The strongest kingdom always presents the greatest fear because they're still growing. And as that kingdom grows, it becomes to think, well, why do we need you anymore? Like, what are you providing for us? This is the relationship that Assyria had with Babylon. And one of the things that there was a time when Assyria was bigger than the Babylonians. And eventually the Assyrians begin to get divided amongst themselves, and they didn't realize that instead of incorporating them, which they tried to do, they realized that they were not situated ideologically to be together. And I think that when you start to see most divisions come from divides, and they come from they're like, what's that song that there ain't enough limelight for everybody? There's only enough limelight for a few people. And so when you start to look at this idea historically, what I've seen is that power operates in a vacuum. It likes to consolidate because power doesn't want to be threatened. So in order to not be threatened, you create a system where the people with power have insulated themselves from challenges. So like Nixon and Watergate. So Nixon got caught up in that Watergate thing because he was so concerned about what had happened. He implicated himself in the whole thing. But now there's so much bureaucracy between him and the burglars that he don't even have to know. And you know, the key to any successful organization or operation is the ability to compartmentalize information. I only tell certain people certain data. I tell other people other data. We're working together, but nobody knows the inner workings of the organization. So
you know what they call that, right?
Bureaucracy. And that is one of the biggest challenges that we find out is that it's not the dude at the top that's making the choices. It's that middle management dude. It's the guy, it's the gatekeeper dude.
Correct.
That wants to stop the ideas.
It's all you have to do is indoctrinate them with what you need to indoctrinate them, and don't tell them why they're even doing what they're doing. Then it becomes relative to them, and they have no tie to the higher purpose, right? And so they become this secular thought, and that hey, they can just cut off like, hey, that's not my job over that, right? He's like, but my pay grade. Sorry.
Yeah, and
not my department.
And somebody has to be the one that can operate in all compartments, because they're the ones who take the information from all the compartments, compile it, and give it to the king. This is why if you read like the 48 Laws of Power, you talk about the advisors, the people who are closer to you have to be watched even more so, because those are the ones who know what you know. And
you're talking about 48 Laws of Power?
Yes, and we're talking about information power. Now, I will say I have some issues with the book only because it's Eurocentric power. That's my only issue.
So and there should be one, but it's to be acknowledged that it's a book on how to observe it. Observe it.
Oh yeah, but my concern is that if you were to take all these principles and you were to compile them, you could have no friends. You could trust nobody. Right. You essentially would become isolated, and you would essentially only have people in your life that you can manipulate.
That book is for the identification. It is for the identification of external power activities, right? So to understand that book is to understand, if you use it, this is what you might want to do. But if you see it, this is what it looks like. And I think that it's appropriate. Just like they do in the book, right? They give the story and they give interpretation, right? And so the interpretation for us, just like you said it's exactly what you said it is, but it's to be interpreted just like that. Since we live in a heavily Eurocentric world, you might want to pay attention. You might want to pay attention to how they. That's what I'm saying. But I agree with everything that you said. That's why I say you have to read The Seat of the Soul before you read 48 Laws of Power, to give you spiritual foundation and to not corrupt your morality, because that book will do it if you think that it's some sort of Bible to follow.
Yeah, and I think that the idea that power tends to lead to corruption is because if you get power, depending upon how you get power is how you keep power. If you get power tyrannically, you keep it tyrannically. If you don't get power by competence, by your own efforts, you're going to find that once you get to the top, in order to stay at that top, you become something. That's why when people let's say a cop goes into a system to fix policing because he wants to be the change. Eventually, that system corrupts him. Even though he went there idealistically, the system is more powerful than the individual. And individuals don't change systems at the base level. And I think that what we're seeing today happening is that because of our bureaucracies and because of the entrenched ideologies, it takes radical change. It takes radical transformation. And I think that that's where we're approaching. We're approaching a very radical time, like I said before, where people are not just going to take the law into their own hands. Because I deal with arguments, man. This guy was trying to talk about violence in the Black community, right? And you know how like that's the problem. And I thought about it. I said, listen, don't you understand the correlation between police violence and violence in our community? I said, don't you get, if the people who are supposed to enforce the law are breaking the law, don't you think that provides an incentive for those in those communities to also break said law and to also not be able to trust said law enforcement for protection, which leads to more violence? Like, is this a logical leap? Because there's a
Common
correlation.
sense ain't common.
Because there's a logical correlation to that. And I'm not talking about slavery. I'm not talking about historical inequities. I'm talking about the facts on the ground today. Is that when you have a police department that is corrupt, they tend to live in areas that are also corrupted.
Corrupt. All right, so it's like age old, do as I say, don't do as I do. Because that's what's happening. Because as a person of authority like that, you should carry yourself in such a way that's to be emulated. So when you do have to enforce the law, you're doing it and you're not being a hypocrite. And so, but this is important to understand, because when we talk about external power, man, I have found that external power is like unoxygenated blood. Okay. And so unoxygenated blood has to come into the left side of the heart. And anybody, doctor or someone to correct me, whatever. I'm not going to use scientific terms, but it comes in the heart on the left side, doesn't go backwards ever. It comes through the middle, goes up throughout the heart, goes through the lungs, comes back through the left side. So what's the right? So I was right the first side. So I was doing left, whatever. Right side comes in the left side as oxygenated blood, pumps through the heart to go to the organs as oxygenated blood. Unoxygenated blood doesn't go to the organs. It comes back through, it filters. External power is like that. We get external power because God, the universe, whatever, allows us to feel whatever we feel. We're blessed with whatever we're blessed with. Intellect, our wealths, whatever, right? If we don't turn around and give God the praises and give people goodwill, be of goodwill and good cheer and be of reverence and go after your purpose in life and learn from your mistakes and be a great person, and then turn around and give that external power, that respect, give it to God. Say, I ain't do it, God did it. Just always be of good nature, good cheer, right? Peace, love, happiness. Be about your beliefs of altruism. Be of good action. So that's be of good thought and belief. Be of good action and service, right? And that's be of good goals and habits. All of these things are put in place for us to do. And if we don't do it, it's like taking on unoxygenated blood. If unoxygenated blood goes to to any part of the body, it is potentially to become diseased and die. What we are having in this country is a bunch of people wanting external power and respect in whatever way they feel like they have to go and get it. And it's going well beyond humanity and killing people off to the point where people who I feel like there's this hate for authentic power. Like, there's no way we can all live along here when we actually can. There's this fear that everything's running out and everybody just needs to fend for themselves, man. And guess what? The solidarity is shown as soon as tragedy happens. Everybody runs to their side. And the people who are trying to figure it out, who want to live in the gray, but not necessarily know what to say, want to have these conversations, but live in their conscious and mental models sometimes, even though they want to be free. So this is where cognitive biases come in. The logical fallacies of explanation, because to understand the cognitive bias is the way your brain works. Cognitive biases lead to logical fallacies in argument. therefore
Oh yeah.
creating a secular problem, and you can't even get out of the circle, just like you can't get out of the circle of living to which the American distraction wants you to be, bruh.
Oh yeah. But I will add this, man. I will say that
Tired
you
of
know
it. Go ahead, man.
that's good. No, good point. Hey, good points, man. Like I said, I don't take issue with anything you said, man. My only concern is when it comes to what brings us together being tragedy. Because if you go back to, if you let's use the Bible as a good example. If you go to the book of Exodus, um, you know, God in the Bible heard the suffering of his people. He heard the suffering of his people because of what they were going through in Egypt, and he raised up Moses to
Chapter
deliver.
2.
Yeah, and he raised up Moses for the purpose of freeing them from the bondage and the turmoil that they were facing. And so the reason that tragedy galvanizes us all is because I tell people, being in a shared trauma group, because I say outside of our shared trauma, we really don't have much in common as Black people in America. We don't.
Nope.
There is more
Nope.
difference. There is more difference of thought amongst us as a group than any other groups of people anywhere. We are very diverse people. We
Right.
have very diverse ideas, but we have a common idea when it comes to injustice, when it comes to tragedy, that will compel us to put our ideas aside to focus on a larger issue. And the reason that I bring the Bible up is because I think that historically, what has created the most, I would say, change is injustice. Injustice, nothing is heavier than it. It's the heaviest force in the universe. It weighs more than anything. Injustice can bring down your conscience because now you have to now live in a society in denial of what your eyes are telling you. And I think that where people find strength is that you're not suffering alone. You're not suffering. You're like, a lot of people have been having mental health issues because of this violence in America. They have. A lot of people have been losing stability in their mind because they don't see a way out. See, one of the goals of tyranny is to make you feel dejected as it is insurmountable, to make us feel that no matter what we do, ain't nothing gonna change, it's just the way it is, and we become content in our suffering. And so a system that's tyrannical wants you to be content in your suffering because now you won't challenge those who are making you suffer. And so when I think
But
about
that
this,
was
no, go ahead.
go ahead, my brother.
No, go ahead.
I was thinking that was part of what religion was doing, though, substantiating the thought of regular suffering being regular, right, and using Exodus as example. Well, not we're going to say Exodus, but using certain parts of Old Testament of
Yes.
examples of slaves and how, you know what I mean. So that goes directly into it being
Oh yeah.
weaponized.
So one of the things is that it says, if I don't provide you an alternative to suffering, but endurance, then all you're going to have is endurance. How about this? How about I provide you an alternative to suffering that doesn't require endurance? How about instead of me, you suffering of thirst, how about I just give you some water? Now you ain't got to suffer in
Right.
your thirst. How about if you suffering for food, I give you some food. You ain't got to. How about this? How about if you suffering for injustice? How about we give you some justice so you ain't got to suffer anymore? And so we are living in a society of people who did not want to give you anything for your suffering except how to do it better. Instead of me redressing your grievance, I'm going to give you this book to help you with your grieving and to endure hardships. And I'm going to teach you how to be a good slave. And I think that it was so effective for so long because we had no alternative.
Okay.
And so,
okay. So here comes the gladiator. Years and years of slavery has the power to become the king. That powerful kingdom, matter of fact, that powerful kingdom that the emperor's scared of, the gladiator won't do it because of years and years of indoctrination. Not because, this is speculation, years and years of indoctrination of just endurance. They have nothing else there. So why would you challenge something that has oppressed you for so long that's all you know?
but this is a good question. So if you go back to the Bible, did God ever want the children of Israel to have a king? With Gideon, did God, the children of Israel wanted to make Gideon the king, but did God want them to have a king? He did not. It was Samuel who he never wanted them to have a king. They had in Numbers under Moses, they had like a republic, 12 elders of the 12 tribes, and they broke down over the 100. You had one over the 100, and so they had a system that was kind of like a republic where everybody kind of had a say. In a kingdom, no one gets a say. The king gets to say. And I think that what we have created is a society. This is where Thomas Paine wrote about in Common Sense. He talked about how anytime you have a system that cannot be changed based off of historical precedent will lead to tyranny. That is birthright leadership. So you shouldn't be the king just because your dad was the king. Because just because your dad was a good king don't mean you're going to be a good king. But if our system says that the firstborn son becomes the king, which is why Jacob and Esau, if you read the Bible story, the younger shall serve the elder, which is changing the tradition. The tradition is just because you're the firstborn don't mean you get to rule. And when you start to change traditions like this, what I'm seeing happening and why we rely on the tradition is because if we don't have anything to replace it with. We don't, and it creates fear in people if you say, well, look, this is how we've always been doing it. And anything that's new, you know, the percentages, 15% of people are going to be on board, the early adopters, you want to have people who are going to be like, stupid idea, the laggards, the 40%, and you find yourself only needing 10% of the people. You only need 10% of the people to get the idea going. Because once you start to get away from defeatist mentality, because I hear that today, I hear a lot of defeatism in people. And I think that they're defeatist because the system has been effective, because they don't see the way out. They don't see this ever stopping. They just see it happening. They become numb. They become numb and they become jaded by a system that was designed to make you numb and jaded. And so where and why I think the Bible is important, because it provides this idea where David comes in. The small dude with the slingshot can take down the giant. Because we all like the underdog. We like the roots for the underdog story. And that's what I see us. I see us as this underdog where we're fighting a system that's big for 400 years. But I like to think of the slingshot, because all it has to do, the slingshot can be psychological. The slingshot shatters the idea. It hits the idea, because if the idea falls away, then all of the things that supported it will fall away. And all it takes is one to crack that idea. And so often I find that we're not aiming at what a synergy. We're not being synergistic. It's like you're fighting over there, I'm fighting over here.
Right.
wait a minute. Okay, how about this? How about I stop fighting for 5 minutes and I come help you fight for 10 minutes? Now your battle is good. Now you finish fighting. Come on, help me fight.
Come help me. Yeah, for sure.
And so this idea of covenant, this idea of building community is that we have a rallying cry. That's why all nations have a flag, because every cause needs a banner. Psychologically, we need a flag, a rallying cry. And I think in America, our only really rallying cry is this idea that what happened to Tyree Nichols can happen to you, can happen to your son, can happen to your nephew, can happen to your cousin, can happen to your big brother, can happen to anybody in your family. What happened to that man could happen to you. And I'm thinking to myself, like, that shouldn't happen to anybody in a society that we say is just. Shouldn't happen to anybody. And I think that we have a system where we learn violence from some of the most violent people to ever walk the earth. Historically, we learned violence from the people who didn't kill the Indians. They just killed their food supply. You know how evil that is? Like, I'm not going to just shoot you and stab you. I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill what you eat and watch you starve to death. You know how depraved that is? This is what we learn from. We learn from a people
I know.
we're savage. And now all I'm saying is that when you adapt the ways of the savagery that you have seen, because remember, I tell people all the time, before slavery and colonization, there were no prisons in Africa. Do you know that? They did not even have the word prison in their vocabulary. They didn't believe this idea of putting you in a cell helped you anything. The idea in African society was that if you let down the community, you letting down the community was the worst thing you could do.
Was enough.
It was enough. And nobody wanted to be disesteemed from the community. And it was the European idea that put this mad person in a cell, in a cage, segregated from society to reform him.
Yeah.
Like, what?
Yeah.
So that contrast is, I think, what we're really up against is, and I think that
they said solitary confinement was like one of the worst things invented.
Because you lose your mind.
You know, and so that and it makes sense, right? But if you start look at what they was doing at Guantanamo Bay,
bro,
with the torture, and then it came from like those Air Force SEER guys. I was like, that's right where it needed to come from. The right branch. What's that?
Psychological warfare. The PSYOPs guys.
Oh yeah. PSYOPs. Yeah. But it was the SEER guy.
Yep. Light deprivation.
And they did that.
Yeah, because they understand.
Yeah, and so they went. Listen. I know we might have talked about it. When I watched that particular movie, the something report, torture report with Adam Driver. I was watching them torture them people, and it just looked a little bit too familiar the way people used to be treated back in the day. But we're gonna leave it at that. But here's what I want to do, Doc. We got about a minute 30, man. So I want to go on and wrap us up. We're going to hit our hour and 10. So that's 110. And so, yeah, man, going to pull it out. So I want to go with the money tip. My money tip, one thing that I learned recently, if you're into credit cards and points and stuff like that, is to, if you're big on that, like there's 24 major cards or whatever, but the thought that I had for this money tip is make sure you get the American Express one last, and make sure you get the platinum card before you get the gold card, because you can max them out your points. If you get the gold card before the platinum, you miss out on about $70,000 worth of membership sign-on points. So make sure you get the platinum before you get the gold, and make sure if you're on that credit card hunt for those points, make sure you get the American Express last. And they all of them finicky. And my book tip, I think I'm gonna go with since I'm in I want to talk about white fragility, Rob and D'Angelo's, but I ain't
Go,
gonna do
go.
that. Oops, drop one. I'm gonna go naked statistics, man. Charles Whelan. Let me tell you something, man. This book has made it very easy to digest statistics and gives great analogy, man. So I'm gonna just drop that money tip and that book tip. That's where I'm at. What you got, Doc?
Oh man, we are in tax season.
Mm,
I tell people a lot of times, man, the tax code was not written for you to understand it. And even though a lot
right.
of people go and they pay to get their taxes done, it's always a good skill to have. I always think like, what if, the system is so cumbersome and it's so confusing and it could be easy. And I just know that anytime they make something hard, it's to get over on you. um,
Correct.
so I always encourage people to, even though you're having somebody do it for you, read about the 1040 EZ and what kind of itemized deductions you can have, standard deduction, because a lot of times our deductions don't equal what they give you, and they do that on purpose to discourage people from itemizing because it makes them have to work harder, and
Right.
uh, the IRS audits about 1 million people a year, and about 2/3 of those people have large personal itemized deductions. So it's always something to be mindful of. If you're trying to get over on the government, you got to do it on a small scale, and don't do it too big. You know what I
Uh-huh.
mean?
Yeah,
And in
yeah,
my
yeah,
book,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's MLK month, man. We're coming from Black History Month, and I enjoy this Black History because it's supposed to be a roadmap, not about history. Before he died,
Mm,
he wrote this book. Where do we go from here? Chaos or community? This question is so powerful, man. When I read this book, I'm realizing that civil rights was just the beginning. Civil rights was only supposed to open the door up. That was supposed to be the appetizer. But once civil
mm-hmm.
rights ended, it was supposed to lead to equality, and it didn't. And I think that the choice of chaos, most people don't understand the king that talked about this. Like they talk about him like he was in the 60s, but he saw what would happen to us today if we did not adopt community. And he saw the violence, he saw the stuff. And I encourage people to read what he wrote because he's got some insights that are very powerful. And it ain't just for Black people, it's a community, because his idea was that chaos was the opposite of community. And I think that, we can look in our inner cities today, we see a lot of chaos, and everybody wants to have a theory about why it is. Why is there, what's going on? And we don't want to read from the people who told us what would happen if we did not adopt community. We would end up in chaos. That's all I got.
Man. So thank you, Doc. Uh, with that being said, man, this has been another good,
Oh yeah.
objectively aggressive conversation about a lot of different things. Tyree Nichols, RIP. Um, it's unfortunate we had another police incident that creates another gap in trust. Um, it gives it another situation to bring up about the disparity between Black people inside our culture. Um, it brings up the lack of, information that people outside of our culture who try to speculate because they sit around and try to watch the aesthetics of our culture, then try to speculate
Yeah.
on our culture when it's so comprehensive.
Bruh.
Um,
Ugh.
so to say that is to say, I want to be one of the people to connect the dots for both sides.
Yeah.
Because we came up in a place where we learn how to communicate with a lot of different people, and now me and you are certain or in places where normal people aren't. And I want to tip my hat to you for being a trailblazer and being influential to me for wanting to take my journey. Um,
Take it.
and I want to say that, yeah, I'm gonna try to do my thing, man. But I want to say that you are what you put forth the effort to do.
Yeah.
And I learned, man, you're not only a peer, you're a mentor, and I say a mentor because anytime that somebody has something that I feel is admirable and that I can learn from, mentor. It doesn't matter how old or young you are.
Oh yeah,
And
man.
so to understand that you are that to me, that's me being humble and learning and knowing my place and knowing my location because I know where I want to go. And
Oh
so
yeah, man.
I say that I say that to say, Doc, that I learn from my mentors and subject matter experts. I debate topics with my peers and colleagues, and I teach everybody else.
Hey, you sound like Dr. Henry Clark, man. He said, I only debate my equals. Everybody else is peace. But I would say, man, I appreciate you having the forum, man, because a lot of times, man, it reminds me of that movie, A Field of Dreams, Kevin Costner. He said, look, man, if you build it, they will come. And
They will
nobody wants
come.
to build it, but everybody wants to come. You know what I mean? Nobody wants to be a builder. And I'd say, man, that, when it comes to thoughts, it's important that we wrestle with them. And it's important. It's not arguing, it's not debating, it's wrestling. Because mentally, we like I noticed the thing about us, man, is we want to reconcile first. You ever notice that? You talk to certain people and they don't want to reconcile with you. I want to reconcile my thoughts first because I don't want to push my agenda. I want to hear what you
Right,
say, and therefore,
right.
and sometimes it's easier to reconcile when you approach it like we want to learn. And I
Correct.
tell you,
But
I hate the term doctor because people think we ain't got nothing to learn. I say, bro, that ain't what
oh
it
yeah,
means.
no,
Bro, that ain't
that
what it
ain't it.
means. It just means that in a system or in a construct, it's a framework of how to do a process. That's all it is.
Correct,
It's how to
correct.
approach a process. And I think that you approach stuff, man, with the idea that it's not what I know that's going to help anybody. It's what you know that I can share with others. Because you, like you said, man, it's I don't give a baby steak because they're not ready yet. And I know that so often you got to give them milk first and you get them up. And I've
Mhm.
learned a lot of times for me, man, it's like I'm ready to eat the steak. But it's like, no, bro, they're eating tuna right now. You know what I'm saying? I've noticed that.
So you notice how I kind of
No, I know, no, no. I mean, because
draw
that's
things
important.
up?
No, it's important, man. Because a lot of times it's like if you can't explain to somebody what you know, then it's not really as effective. It's good that you know it, but how do I take this and break it down? And if we don't break it down for people, then we're going to talk over their heads and we're going to lose them. And I just think that we're in a
Right.
point now where there's a need for that. There's a need for that for people
And
who can take complex things and make them digestible, because I think that what I've learned is that people are okay being challenged in increments. It's like you
right.
can challenge me a little bit today, but don't go
Mhm.
too far, too fast. Break off a little, and I think that's
And that's
people get tired of that, man.
and that's why I stir the pot.
Hey, man, you got to because if you don't get stirred, all you're gonna have is a pot with all the good stuff at the bottom, and the
At the
people at the
bottom.
top just some broth.
Hey, ain't that what America is?
No, bro, America is not a melting pot. America was supposed to be a
I'm
melting
saying all
pot.
the good stuff's at the bottom.
We never melted though. We supposed to be a salad bowl. Hey,
Oh yeah.
we should be a salad bowl. No, because I will say, man, one of the things that I really enjoy is when I talk to people and I realize how undiverse their background is. Not into
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, how most people only want to talk to people who agree with what they think.
Uh,
And see, like some days I'll just put on a conservative talk show radio host, and I'll listen to the callers call in, and I just be like, these are some.
yeah.
I'm like, I'm trying to withhold judgment, but I'm like, these are some
What?
idiots.
He
And I'm not
dumb,
and I'm not
dumb.
and I'm not saying to be judgmental. I'm just saying it because I'm thinking to myself, like, I'm trying to
No,
reconcile it. Like, what is this talking about? And I'm just like,
No. To identify people as dumb and ignorant and not know them, but hear what they're saying based on certain concepts, and you understand the concepts. I think it's fair to say dumb.
yeah, but I mean, I'm talking about it in a constructive way because I don't
Yeah.
think that the idea is it's one thing to be misinformed. I think that it's a different to be misinformed and to continue with the misinformation.
Bruh, come on
You
now.
know,
Listen to me. Hey, listen to me. Listen to me. If a man cheats on a woman and this man is the king, here we go. And if it was to be found out that he cheated, because everybody knows except the wife. So if it was to be found out, everybody would be put down. Like shit would be laid down, right?
yeah,
Okay. The king is gonna stay in power, and that woman is never gonna find out because everybody wants to stay alive and keep the power that they have, right? So if it is a question, hey, did you see the king? All lies. Oh yeah, no, the king was over
coerced
here.
silence.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So right now, that is the analogy, man. Like when there's an issue, be quiet because we have to consciously or unconsciously keep our power.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And so this is a challenge because I don't think the concern is they're going to keep their power until it comes to violence. Because history has taught us that when they can no longer win electorally, they're going to resort to what they know best: violence. That's
Mhm.
their go-to weapon. You know what I mean? Like when they first came here, you think they outnumbered the Indians here? No, but
No,
they were willing to do something that the Indians wasn't willing to do initially.
take it a
Slaughter
step further.
everybody. Here's some
And now
smallpox.
that right there,
Here's some
think about
smallpox
that.
blanket.
Think about that, man. Think about that right there in itself. Right? You take these people, and we say a set of people who said, you know what, we're gonna kill all of them. That right there lets you know how low vibrational that was. Because to come to a place where people say, hey, come eat with us, fellowship with us, join us, this is all yours too. And we say, we're going to kill you and take it. That sounds
Yeah,
like a kid. That sounds like that's very low vibrational. And it
yeah.
sounds like a kid who never had anything and just mine.
You've been to Europe, right?
Absolutely.
So you understand that what Europe continentally looks like when it comes to resources, right? Like you're talking about a people who grew up in a place where
Mountain.
they had to fight for survival. Like
Mhm.
they looked at strangers as intruders, as threats. This was somebody coming to
Mhm.
take my food from me. And
Mhm.
when they got on them boats, they didn't leave all that behind. but
It's
more
hard. It's
important,
hard to.
yeah, but more importantly, I look at it like, to me, I look at it as different. I think of it like it's how we do it that changes, not that we do it. It's how we do it, because we have to do it and make an argument to ourselves that rationalize or justifies our behavior. So we can feel like we're okay, because nobody wants to just be a monster for monster's sake. I'm sure they had a lot of their own internal rationale for why they did what they did. But I look at it to say it's, it's like, what did dude say, man? If you want to lynch me, that's your problem. If you got the power to lynch, that's my problem. It's my problem.
Wow.
And I
That's
think
that's
And I think for so oftentimes we have to now start to think about this in the sense of it. It's not even, when it comes to the policing, I say, listen, man, Black people were always more brutal to us during slavery than the white people were. People don't realize that. The Black overseer was more brutal on the plantation than the white overseer. And because he was more brutal for two reasons. One, the white overseer enjoyed it because it meant that the other slaves were mad at the Black overseer. So when the Black overseer was correcting a slave too harshly, the white overseer would come in and say, hey, you're being too rough on him. So now the slave associated that white person with help, and
Being
the Black
a
person
savior.
yes, and the Black person with brutality, not knowing that the white dude was the one who told him to beat you. Like, that level of psychology is so ingrained
That's
into
high
our
level, man.
bruh.
It's
That
so
is
diabolical, man.
yeah.
That's
And,
diabolical,
and
man.
when you start to see the reasons that the Black people were more brutal to us, the second reason is because they knew if they show any kindness or compassion to us, they could be in that same position. Because the overseer had to trust that that Black person who was overseeing had no allegiance to those people doing that, because he could help them escape. And that's
Exactly.
what
He'll be the
and
one to
that's
help him escape.
and that's we still deal with some of that rationale of that white savior complex, which is why every predominantly Black movement has been led by white people. If you think about every
Yeah.
major movement, the abolitionist movement wasn't led by Black people. The Back to Africa movement was led by Black people. The NAACP was led by Black people. A lot of these movements were not led by us. And not saying that we have to lead every movement, but it's this interest. It's people wanting to appease their own conscience. Oh, look what I have done. Well, I ain't doing what he's
Right.
doing. And that's why I
Right.
reject the idea of a good slave owner and a bad slave owner. I reject it.
Yeah,
Well, he was a
no,
good owner. I said, listen, the system is evil. So if you participate in the system, you bad, because the system is the problem. Not if you were, well, he didn't beat his slave. Like, no, but you own people. The system is corrupt. And that's why I think when people make the historical argument about the differences, it's like we are the only people who have ever been enslaved who wrote their story down. You know, is that?
Right.
No, everybody else in history have ever written their story down. We don't have any stories of Roman slaves. We don't have any history or historical counts of Greek slaves or the Barbary Coast pirate slaves. We don't have their histories. Two reasons. One, they couldn't read or write, so they couldn't write their history down. And their history was told to us by their enslaver. And don't you know that history, the people who enslave you tend to write favorably about their system to other people.
They're expensive. Right.
Like, yeah, I'm not gonna
Can't
write
even
myself.
believe it.
Yeah, I'm not gonna write
Can't even
myself
believe it.
as a barbarian. I'm a wicked slave master. Like, they had to pass laws in the South to give slaves food rations because you had people who wouldn't feed their people. Like, seriously, you had to pass laws to give people food, and that was in some states. Some states there was no requirement. It's crazy.
You know, I was gonna say something about the white savior thing, because you know they did that in Black Panther, the first one. Right.
Hey man, I saw a
And
breakdown
then,
on the second one, man. Like the Black people fighting the Mexicans.
oh yeah. And then like at the end saying, oh, they own it now, but they'll eventually need us types.
It's a lot of, and I will tell you this, man. I saw a good break. They said, look, man, in every superhuman movie, they end up fighting the people who are oppressing them. You know, in every one. And I think that it's so crazy that the iconography is so challenging, because when the movie first started, I think that we have not seen Black royalty.
That's the thing.
I mean, we had that Remember the Time video with Michael Jackson back in the day with Eddie Murphy.
Yeah, yeah.
We had that,
Mm-hmm.
but we've never had yeah, exactly. But we've never seen like I would love to see a movie about when the Moors ruled Spain.
Ooh, we're just talking about the Moors.
Because I think that it has this impact that can say that, wait a minute, you know, they didn't just take savages from Africa and give them Christianity, and then they made it so they helped us out. Like, that's sickening me. Like, they made it seem like they was doing us a favor. like we took some savages from Africa and we gave y'all some religion. Like, what? I'm like, what? That only makes sense. Don't you realize that you took it from us? Like, you know, hey, it's like hey man, don't get me started, man. Don't get me started, man.
Yeah. You know what? Yeah. Okay. We at 1:30. Guess we were doing good enough to still have 2 viewers. So appreciate y'all. We out here. And so I'll say, we're doing a lot of talking, but I also do a lot of walking around, showing my reverence, right? And so, you know, I go to oabykj.com. I order my stuff, right? We got the new stuff, Sex Trophy. Now, Sex Trophy. Now, Sex Trophy is to understand that God is the creator, but understanding that the closest thing that a person can get to God is, you know, like being God, is to making children, right? And so at the end of the day, your child is a sex trophy. But we are sex trophies because we are children of our parents. But it gets into the idea of creation, right? Creation. And so it was just something I was playing with, but you know, a little taboo, a little risque, but whatever.
Hey,
go show your reverence. What'd you see?
No, I saw your hat. I saw your hat, man. I was like, okay. He said it's like an onion, man. There's layers.
It's all there, man. I got the shirt too. I got the shirt. So hey, when you see it, just know.
Hey man,
you know I lay traps for everything.
Hey man, you got too much free time.
No. Hey,
you gotta have free time to be creative. Hey, you got. Hey, that's because you out the military, man. Now all these ideas coming to you because you got that free time.
Hey, bro, I saw like the month and a half that I was out. I created. You saw I put all my stuff down on paper, at least to put it down. I was like, and that was in a month and a half. Boom, there you go. You're right.
Oh man, yeah, man.
Let's wrap it.
Yeah, bro. Well, holla.
Peace, man. All right, we out here, folks.
All day.